Hello, Julie.
Hello, Tony.
This is exciting and it's long overdue. I am really pleased that you've agreed, and thank you for agreeing to come on the Challenging University podcast.
Oh, you are most welcome. It's something I've been desperately wanting to do for some time and just haven't had the capacity. So really pleased to be here. Really appreciate the invitation.
Brilliant. Now, we've known each other for a long time, actually, a long time. Um, but not everybody that listens to the podcast will know of you, although I think some of them do know of you. But could you please, for the listeners today and the listeners to come, share your full name and what it is that you do for a job today?
Sure. So my name is Julie Simpson. I am the founder and CEO of channel marketing agency ResourceiT. ResourceiT is an organization I started in 2003. And we work with technology companies to help them with their marketing and business development.
Fantastic. So, and full disclosure, I guess, like we met when I was a partner account manager, I think, at Microsoft.
We did.
Yeah, I remember meeting you in the hallways, and then I did go on to work for you, with you, for you, for a little while. So,
And what a pleasure it was.
yeah, yeah. Um, we'll try and keep this on topic. Let's go back in time to a time before we knew one another. Um, Back to your school days. Can you share your memories of secondary school?
Oh yeah. I loved school actually. I really did love school. But I remember my first day at secondary school being completely overwhelmed by the
Mm.
sheer size of it. I'd
Mm.
come from a tiny little school in Basingstoke called Fairfields and went to Harriet Costello in Basingstoke, and I just felt so small. And so childlike in this atmosphere, because suddenly you're with kids that are actually nearly adults. They're 16 and you're
Yeah.
11. So I remember that extremely well, how nervous and overwhelmed I felt by the kind of amount of kids that were there and how big it was.
And do you think you were? Because I briefly went to Harriet Costello only for I don't know a couple of terms, but my memory of it is that did it used to be like an all girls school or an all boys school? It's quite like domineering kind of building, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. And it was an all girls school until I think about 1974 or something like that when they opened it up to boys as well. But yeah, it was originally an all girls school. And when I started, we had a very old fashioned headmistress that used to wear the actual, the master's cape and an
Yeah.
assembly with the board hat with the tassel and stuff. And
Wow.
she was and her name was Mrs. Everest.
Right.
And Miss Everest actually, and she
Yeah.
was, you know, we were scared.
Yeah.
I remember that being like quite intimidated by the teachers and certainly by her. But I think at senior school, I sort of is where you morph from being a child to being, a teenager stroke becoming an adult. And I did love the scope of subjects that I experienced when I went there, typing doing
Yeah.
typing. It was amazing having a typewriter and doing typing. And the sports curriculum, I played netball and hockey, so loved
Yeah.
it, absolutely loved it. And then also, it was the first time they did this experiment where they offered out, and they only did it once in our
Mm.
year, to be able to take Spanish instead of French.
Ah.
As a compulsory language. And so there was myself and probably maybe about 20 of us that
Mm.
chose it. And that was really exciting as well. And I loved the art room and I loved English literature.
Yeah.
Was really excited about Shakespeare, and we did To Kill a Mockingbird and lots of classics. And my English teacher was fantastic. So I loved that. And then I also loved music and drama. I wanted to be on the stage.
Mm.
So, but I remember my drama teacher, because there were two brothers, my next two brothers up from me that went to the school before I did, who were, let's say, just had a different reputation. And I remember walking into the drama class and the teacher saying to me, Dixon, because that was my maiden name, was Julie Dixon. Are you a Dixon? And I said, yes. He went, out.
Wow.
And I wouldn't even let me in the room. And I'm like 11 years old or something, thinking, what
Wow.
am I supposed to do? Because my brothers were, quite disruptive, it seems. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the I remember, all of those feelings. It's very, when someone asks you the question, it's very easy to kind of recall, how
Yeah.
you felt and the excitement, but also overwhelmed and the new experiences.
And how did you overcome that? Because I'm, as the eldest of, so you are very aware of that as you move through a school when your siblings join or you've got siblings above or below you. There is that you get judged based on your
Definitely.
family name, your siblings' reputation. Did you ever get let back in the drama room?
Eventually, but he did give me a hard time for the whole 5 years I was there. And, I was quite talented actually at drama
Yeah.
and quite confident. And I
Mm,
found it really frustrating that that judgment was there because I
mm,
wasn't my brothers and
yeah.
they weren't the best, most committed. I actually studied quite hard. I was quite good at sports. I didn't skive. I
Mm,
was a good girl, if you like,
yeah.
and was I had to work really, really hard. But I don't think I ever felt that I'd been forgiven for being Julie Dixon by that particular teacher, if I'm honest.
Mm. Do a whole episode on that. What happened when you came to your GCSE? So what did you take then? Because you got a good mix there of like academic and arts, the arts. What did you choose to study?
Well, it was all going wonderfully well for me until I was 14, and then my father died, and I went from being pretty much a straight A student to not turning up. I started smoking. I discovered boys,
Mm,
and my education kind of veered off. And I'm really disappointed that that wasn't noticed by the school. I feel now, for
mm,
somebody that was been successful and then had such a traumatic experience, that the education system would support that much better, but they didn't really.
no.
And I came out with so I did English, obviously English literature and language. I did typing. I got a distinction.
Mm,
I did Spanish, which I passed. Got a GCSE in Spanish, or O level
mm,
actually at the time. Geography. I didn't do history. RE,
yeah.
because that was always quite straightforward to get a tick. I
Yeah.
got 7 or 8 kind of classic subjects. I continued to do, I didn't take drama
Mm,
because of the teacher, and I
mm,
should have done, really. And in those days, you didn't take sports as a qualification, but I stayed. I played for the school, netball and hockey, and played for Basingstoke, actually, netball for a few years afterwards. So came out
mm,
of school with, I think, 7 or 8 O levels,
yeah.
by quite a miracle, I feel, because it
Yeah.
certainly wasn't my motivation in the last couple of years of school. I found it really hard to do what I was told and to find the love for it that I'd always had, because I'd had obviously such a traumatic experience.
Yeah. And it's like you know, having lost my dad at the same age, I think that I remember being told, could you just knuckle down for
Yeah.
your mum or for the memory of your dad? And I remember being like furious. But I hope I don't think it's like that now. I would
No,
like to think it's not like that now.
I hope not. I really do.
Hmm. Um, so what did you do that so you completed your education, you took your
Hmm.
exams, you're a good
Hmm.
all-rounder.
Hmm.
Where do you go?
Well, I really wanted to, I wanted to be a journalist or a travel writer. I had a real thirst for traveling, and I loved English so much. But going to college was not an option. Mum had me and 2 other, my 2 brothers were still at home. And, frankly, she needed the money. So I
Mm,
had to go to work. So I literally left school on the Friday at
mm.
16. And on Monday, I went to work. And I went to work at the AA, the Automobile Association in Basingstoke. Didn't everybody work there back in those days? And so there was no question of college. I didn't even ask, you know. I don't think Mum would have you know, stood in my way or not made it work. But I just didn't think it was an option. I just had to go and earn some money and put my pennies into the household. Simple as that, really.
And what did you do? So what was your first job?
I went to work at the AA in what was called the receipts unit. So it was this huge office, and we took in basically payments people were making for their AA membership.
Right. Okay.
And I sat on the special accounts or something, which was basically people who'd paid by credit card.
Yeah.
Or people who had broken down at the side of the road and paid by cash.
Yeah.
And my job was to sit there, and I had these A4 pads, and I used to sit there all day writing out credit card numbers and an amount and the person's name, and then adding it up on a manual adding machine and attaching a receipt to it. And by the end of the day, I would have, you know, a sort of 20 centimeter high pile of sheets. And then I had to add it up at the end of the day and put it in an envelope and log it in the system. And we had one green screen computer in the corner of the office. And there must have been 100 people in that office, and there was one green screen computer there.
And were you allowed to use it?
Very, very occasionally, but you had to book a slot.
Yeah.
I was in charge of the photocopier, which was a very important job.
Yeah.
So I did know how. I used to feel very important when I got called to come and load the paper or change the ink card. Step aside, people.
Yeah.
I will look after the photocopier.
Yeah.
You know.
What was the interview process for that job, by the way?
What? Sorry, Tony?
What was the interview process for that job, by the way?
Interview process. Well, my mum knew one of the supervisors, and I think over a game of darts and a gin and tonic persuaded him to give me a job. I don't think he really had a job, but I think she just, can you know, give my Julie a job kind of thing, and he'd agreed to do it. So I did have an interview. I do remember him asking me about my school absences. And as I mentioned, because of the last couple of years, I probably wasn't there as much as I should have been.
Yeah.
And him saying to me, "Oh, I've had a report. I got in touch with your school, and they said you've had 37 absences." And I'm like, "Oh no, they're sessions." I said, "It's only half of that." Yeah. It's only half of that. It's like it's 18. It's not 37. And he was like, "Oh, okay." And then just filed it, and that was the end of that. So that was my first job. £45 a week I used to get.
Wow. I mean, not bad. Not bad when you're 60, is it?
Yeah, it was. It was amazing. Although I always gave my mum a third of it.
Yeah.
And then as I got a pay rise until I left home, her money went up.
Yeah.
So it was a third to mum, a third saved, and then I was allowed to keep a third.
Okay, so that's good. I mean, in terms of financial literacy, and something that I, see it's talked about a lot now, that early principle, it's good grounding for life.
It really was. It was very much so, and something I carried through with my children, actually.
Yeah. So what did you've been like, at the AA, big brand on the CV straight away. Did you get what did that sort of inspire in you in terms of thinking about where you wanted to go, what you wanted to be doing? Did you look around the office and go, oh, check out the managers with their own offices with a door, where they can sit in there and smoke? Clean those out.
I was more interested in the phone actually in those days, because there would be one phone in the middle of the desk of about 30 people.
Yeah.
And I used to give out the number all the time to my friends and family and things. And I remember being called in one day and said, "Julie, that phone is not there for your personal use." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So the phone was, a big thing, desk phone. I had a couple of jobs at the AA, so I did move up. I was in receipts unit for 2 years, and then I had another job, slightly more senior, for 2 years, and I think maybe up to £100 a week or something by the time I left.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, was it a stage thing or my love of art? I got a job working for an auctioneer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I went as an auctioneer's assistant for 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely amazing. So we went to all sorts of wonderful places in London, all these beautiful paintings and antiques, the
Yeah.
jewelry.
Yeah.
And on auction day, I used to sit beside the auctioneer and, watch while he kind of agreed the lots and who'd bought what. And I
Yeah.
used to type the catalogue because obviously I had a typing distinction, so I was able to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and it was amazing. The problem with that role was that because we only had a sale about once every 3 months, the rest of the time was actually quite tedious.
Yeah.
So people coming in with their sort of stainless steel tea sets and thinking it was worth £100 and wanting to put it in the auction, and I'd have to kind of take it in and write it down and box it up, and so I was there for 2 or 3 years, I can't remember in total, but auctioneer's assistant, loved it, absolutely brilliant, great fun.
Can I just say AA and then auctioneer's assistant?
Double AA. Yeah, we just add on the Alcoholics Anonymous, which came later, and we've got the full house.
So how do you go from, I'm interested now in the journey from auctioneer to tech industry founder. What happens? How does that happen?
Well, I think so after a couple of years of the auctioneer's assistant, I went to work for actually an ISV, although I didn't realise that's what they were at the time, in Basingstoke, called Imrex Systems, a US-based company who wrote financial services software. I got a job as a PA to 2 of their sales directors, and then from there went on to the help desk and started to have an interest in technology in that role. So I was maybe 21, 22, that kind of age. Still, there was no internet and email in the business at all. It was all green screen and so on.
Yeah.
And then I left there because when I was 23 or 24, I had got pregnant with my first child, took a year off, and then when she was 18 months old, the marriage broke up. And I found myself without a job with an 18-month-old child and a mortgage. And then things had to change quickly, faced with those challenges. So I got a job working at Motorola in the telesales department.
Yeah.
Someone told me, sales, you've got the gift of the gab.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what they used to say. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I went to work at Motorola, and then from Motorola, I went to a print company called GBC in Basingstoke, which is also a big employer. And I was selling, the ring binders on the edge of, when you bind documents.
Yeah.
And I'd got into the team that I worked out that because it was commission.
Yeah.
If I sold those boxes of white ring binders, I think I earned something like 7 pence a box in commission.
Yeah.
If I got them to put their logo on it, I got 17 pence a box. So I started to get into kind of branding and marketing, and then I started asking questions about business cards and kind of other elements. So I guess what I was learning there was the power of marketing and branding and the whole cross-sell, upsell, and then speaking to different people in the organization, because the sales director is responsible for the business cards, but the marketing director is responsible for the binding cones. And so I started to learn about networking around an organization. So I was there for a few years, and then from there I got a job at Microsoft systems integrator called ICS in Basingstoke.
Yeah.
And I remember my interview there, I did this pitch on ICS solutions and the missing ingredient, which was, of course, me.
Yeah.
And then I really found my groove in that role. And I went from doing telesales. Within a year, I was running the team of telesales people. Then I got a field job. Within a year, I was leading the field people. And then Microsoft alliances came quite quickly. So that business, Microsoft was my only customer. So it was my job to position that partner to Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I was looking for opportunities for them to hire our facility, for us to work with them on customer projects, for them to take our developers, and that's
Yeah.
how I made my number.
Yeah.
So, and from there, then it then became, then ResourceiT. And the step was that I had a lot of Microsoft people saying to me, you realize there are 25,000 Microsoft partners out there that would be interested in the skills that you have and the network and how you've learned to work with us.
Mm.
And lots of partners saying to me, how do you get this relationship with Microsoft?
Yeah.
And my husband actually was working for an ISV in Basingstoke, and they'd offered him the MD role. They'd got 100 million of VC funding.
Yeah.
But he wasn't very happy in the role, or the
Yeah.
company didn't believe in the strategy. So one day we decided we were going to do it. So we sold our house, Tony. We took our equity. We had 4 children between us under 12.
Yeah.
We took our equity. We both gave up our jobs. And we literally just held hands and jumped off a cliff.
It's
And
amazing.
I mean, I don't know, it was amazing. It was crazy when I look back now. Absolutely crazy. Certainly focused the mind.
And this couple of questions, there's a lot of questions I've got, but I was wondering that. So in those sort of early days, when you're in like the IT industry, and you said you're doing telesales, and you're moving into field sales, and you're working, for a large organization, then facing into Microsoft, was there ever any question about whether you had a degree, whether you understood computer science? Was your experience of being in and around the tech industry one of, if you've got the right attributes, you're all right?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think I ever considered that that was something that would be a barrier for me,
No.
that I hadn't gone to college or university or had a degree. I mean, I was envious of people that seemed cleverer than I was in my mind. They might have used bigger words, or
Mm,
and then also were in some ways better connected because they had university friends, and
yeah.
I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember probably some envy around other people that had a different journey to me,
Mm,
but I never felt that I shouldn't have a seat at the table, or I wasn't
mm.
as capable as they were. Never felt held back by it.
And I'm intrigued actually that you say that, because if I also think about, like you said, initially you'd taken time off to have your first child, and then you found yourself as a single parent with a toddler and a mortgage, and you've gone into Motorola, and then with your now husband, with 4 children under the age of 12, you've gone, yeah, let's just start a business. There doesn't appear to me to be a sense of, I will be held back because of.
Yeah, I just when you put it like that, the Motorola thing. So what happened there was I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying, "No, don't you think you should get a job and like you sort this out because yeah." And I said, "Oh, I could get a job tomorrow." And he went, "Oh, of
Yeah.
course you could." I'm like, "No, no, I really could. I could get." No, you couldn't. Yes, yes, I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. The next morning, I sort of basically phoned around a whole bunch of companies and asked what roles they had, and spoke to a couple of temping agencies. And by 12 o'clock, I was sat at a desk in motor,
You ring
sticking
him
my
up
fingers up. Yeah.
on the group phone. I don't know, clear the desk. I'm having this phone. I've
Exactly,
got a job.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, it is just about the not taking no for an answer, determination.
Mm,
Obviously, there was a need from a financial perspective.
mm,
I think the thing about starting ResourceiT was I just felt that I wanted to make my own silly decisions rather
yeah.
than be following somebody else's, which, if I'm really honest, Tony, I thought I knew everything when I came out of ICS, and I was going to be amazing and it was going to be amazing. I actually found out very quickly that I knew jack about running a company. And we had to learn pretty blooming quickly, we didn't pay
Yeah.
ourselves for the first year. We used up all our equity with setting the company up, and
Yeah.
it was really, really hard, really hard. But fortunately, my network, my relationship with Microsoft, the respect that I'd earned
Mm,
in the industry, the friends I had,
mm,
I did get. There's always there were people there that were willing to take a chance on us and do some work. And initially I was the company.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, so how did you set the business up? You know, what did you kind of learn along the way in terms of going, right, yeah, today I'm employed, tomorrow taking the equity out of the house, and me and my husband, we're going to set this business up. Any pearls of wisdom from that experience?
Great question. Initially I had a whole bunch of things I knew about.
Mm.
So I had a black book of technical contractors that I had been using to extend our capability in the partner I worked for, and trainers and so on.
Mm.
I had some amazing relationships with people at Microsoft who I'd worked with and delivered a solution to them in some way or another through the work I'd done. So I had a good, solid reliability reputation.
Mm.
I knew about alliances with Microsoft. I knew about sales because I'd been doing right at the sharp end,
Yeah.
telesales and
Yeah.
then onto field sales. And I knew about sales management to a point.
Yeah.
I knew about Microsoft technology. I mean, those days it was NT4 and VB6, and it was before
Yeah.
.NET even, right?
Yeah.
And so I basically just got in touch with everybody that I knew and pitched them on whatever it was that I thought they might like to buy. So I was kind of chucking a load up at the wall to see what would stick. And so initially I was making the phone calls and doing the telesales. I was doing the alliances for people. So they were hiring me as a resource.
Yeah.
And I very quickly didn't have enough capacity. So then I found someone that I knew that did telesales, and I paid them. We went 50-50 on what I'd meant. So that became the first employee. And then somebody else that I knew that did training. So, worked on that. And we grew the business actually. In the first year, we went from 0 to £1 million.
Wow.
Which was incredible. I mean, the bank loved it, 100,000 a month going through. They were like, what the hell is going on here? Actually, when I looked at the P&L at the end of the year, we made about 30 grand. So it wasn't actually that successful. But again, you learn. Like, I don't think you would speak to any entrepreneur that doesn't say, yeah, you've got to get it wrong a few times before it works. But over the years, we kind of learned. And then our groove very much became about helping technology businesses do business development well, do marketing effectively, and make the most of their alliance partnerships. And so we, over time, were able to shape those services and grow, obviously, to what we've got today, which is amazing.
And I was just thinking, actually, is it been nearly 20 years? Nearly 20
Yeah,
years?
it was 2003. It's 20 years this year.
So congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Thanks.
How in building the business and thinking about your experiences and how you come up through the industry, how does that influence your hiring practices and how you've brought people in and what the company looks like today?
Another great question, of course. I believe that this ResourceiT is as strong as it is because of the differences in the employees. So we have a wide variety of people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different ages, different places in their life. And that gives us so much richness in terms of what our knowledge is, and all of those brains, they're all different. And that is massively important, especially for a business that we are, channel agency. It particularly helps my background. I look for people that are smart, and smart people are not necessarily academically, furnished with A levels coming out of their ears and degrees and so on. You don't necessarily have to have those qualifications to be smart, because Exhibit A to myself, I felt that I was quite smart, and yet I hadn't done any of those things. So I have this technique in an interview which I use, which I'm happy to share. So the biggest thing I think that has made me successful is my recall. So I can have a conversation with somebody, and because I have learned to intensely listen to what people say, and I mean intensely listen, then I can make them feel special. I can go back on the things they've said to me. I can, meet them again and remember who their family is, or where they were when the last time I saw them, etc.
Yeah.
So what I look for is recall. And I say to people in an interview, I'll say to them, right, I've got a question to ask you, and I want you to listen really, really carefully, and then answer the question. So they sort of, get ready. And so then I say, what would your best friend say about you? What keeps you awake at night? And give me an example of when something went wrong at work and what you did about it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm testing there is recall. So what happens is people remember the first question, my best friend. Often they'll go off on a tangent and they'll talk about their best friend, and this happened and that happened and da da da, and then they'll go, what was the second one? That's not what I'm looking for, right? Now,
Yeah.
I didn't say you couldn't write it down. So you could have
Yeah.
written it down, no problem at all. So if you
Yeah.
can't recall it, at least be smart enough to write it down.
Yeah.
Only about 10% of people can answer like that. And the smart ones will say, well, my best friend would say that I'm loyal and committed.
Yeah.
What keeps me awake at night? And they'll give short answers, and
Yeah.
they'll do it. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking for at ResourceiT, is people that are smart
Yeah.
enough to listen well
Mm.
or write it down, and to not go off on a tangent. And as a marketing agency, when we're speaking to people, telling them, and they're telling us about their technology business, they give you so much information.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to recall what they've told you, and
Yeah.
take notes and have a dynamic conversation. And
Yeah.
those are the people that we're interested in our business.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So I was saying again, did you ask me those questions?
Yes, and you answered them.
Yes, you did. Yeah, but I think, and that's really interesting. And I know, like today, and maybe you could talk a bit about this actually. You've been through I guess a huge, I don't want to say transformation, but things have changed in Resource IT. Like you said, you used to be the business, and people would say, oh, I just want to see Julie. I don't want to see anybody else. I just want to see her. But you're overseeing the organization now. So it'd be lovely if you could share a bit of what that has been like for you, because I know lots of people who have said, I run my own business, but I don't want to just be the business. I want to be able to sit back, enjoy it, let other people take the reins.
Yeah, I suffered with that for a long time, and I think, again, anybody that sells themselves in business will have the same challenge. What I did was I learned, and I actually went and got trained, and I fundamentally believe in the power of training in whatever that is. Recognize your weakness and go and learn how to make it stronger. Whether that's presentation skills or interviewing skills, or finance for non-finance managers, or sales if you're not sales. Go and learn and be trained. So I got coaching and learning on delegation.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest hurdles for me, was trusting that there were other intelligent, capable people around,
Yeah.
and that I could trust them to do a job, and also accepting that people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, someone years ago said to me, Julie, sometimes good is good enough.
Yeah.
And for me, it had to be perfect. And that's why I wanted to see everything and check everything and make everything happen. We're human beings, we make mistakes, and mistakes
Yeah.
happen in business. And I always feel like it's not the mistake, it's what you do about it. So I think that kind of education around delegation, that I went and got for myself, and learned how to do that better and be better at that. And then also, I definitely went through a transition of honesty. So I feel like early on, I used to try and be what was expected of me. So I would speak a certain way, or present a certain way, or, behave in a certain way. And actually, I was coming across quite disingenuous, because I wasn't being myself.
Mm.
And myself is actually, I think anybody that meets me would say they meet the same person, whether
Yeah.
that's the cleaner or, you know, the next door neighbor or a CEO in, you know, a big job in one of our clients.
Yeah.
And the myself is an honest person. So when I tried to make that transition from it's not going to be me, I would just have that conversation with the customer and say, look, I know that you have great confidence in my ability. That has to go along with in my ability to choose great people that can do a fabulous job for you. So, you know, being honest about, you know, introducing that other person, that other team into, if you've got any problems at all with it, of course, I'm here. I'll be keeping an eye for you, but these people are going to do a fantastic job. And actually, they're better qualified than I am to be able to do it. And again, that just the transparency, the honesty, and the confidence to be able to do that was kind of what enabled my work-life balance to get better, and ultimately ResourceiT to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I was thinking about some of the, you know, that you've presented with Gabriella Schuster, and so, you know, you're kind of moving in some pretty influential circles, Julie. How does that feel? Do you, like you said, you've kind of walked in and said, well, of course I have a right to be here. Do you feel, particularly in that American corporate culture, I've always seen it noted like this is the VP of something, and this is what their masters was in. Was there, did that ever come up for you?
I don't, maybe I wasn't looking for it, but I kind of, I guess because I've always grown up with the fact that most people that I've worked with had a degree or had a master's or had this or had
Yeah,
that, and I didn't, that I
yeah,
just expected that that was the case. And so I
yeah,
never really took any notice of it. I mean, Gabriella is one of the most supportive and empowering leaders I have ever sat down with. And I remember the first time I met her, I muscled in on a meeting that was full of, it was in the US and it was
yeah,
at their big conference, and it was all white middle-aged males.
yeah,
And somehow I managed to get in the room and get at the table, and Gabriella was talking,
yeah.
and then she said, you know, who's got a question? And I asked her a very acute business question,
Mm.
right towards the end of the meeting, and she came over and she gave me a business card and she said, I would like to speak to you again. And I was the
Wow.
only person she did that to,
Yeah.
because I was listening to her, I was paying attention to what she was saying, I was being smart
Mm.
about that opportunity.
Mm.
And we have and still have a great relationship. She's a fantastic advocate for women in technology, a great friend and supporter of mine and I of her. And thank goodness for her and people like her. But I never felt intimidated at all. She just, you know, loved it that I tell it how it is. And a lot of the
Yeah.
corp people I met kind of thrived on the fun and humor of our conversation and the honesty of it. Again, just being yourself.
Yeah. And we should actually, for those people that aren't part of the Microsoft ecosystem, Gabriella's current role is, please help me.
Well, Gabriella actually left Microsoft. So Gabriella was the VP of the One Commercial Partner Group. So she
Right.
owned the partner channel worldwide. So that's
Wow.
300,000 companies that
Yeah.
Microsoft has partnerships with.
Yeah.
Gabriella actually left, and she does basically D&I advocacy. So she's just released actually a whole load of content around. She is 100% focused on the D&I agenda and
Mm.
advancing, you know, that in our industry, and sits on a whole bunch of boards. She speaks. She's done a TED talk. She supports any organization that is struggling with D&I. She's created a whole bunch of content and a framework, and it's amazing. So I would definitely recommend having a read of that if D&I is something that's important to you.
Fantastic. Tell me a little bit about, and I'm keeping an eye on the time here. and this we can't not talk about this, because you said you started ResourceiT, you had 4 children under 12. Your children are not under 12 anymore, but as they were going through that process of becoming young adults, how did your experience shape the advice that you gave them, whether or not they chose to listen to that or take it on board?
Yeah, well, so Mick had 3 children, and they were, I think when we moved in together, they were sort of 6, 8, and 10, something like that. My daughter was 5. In terms of my daughter, Tori, she now is the general manager at ResourceiT. How did that shape it? So Tori was very academic at school. She kind of went through a similar situation with me, but a little older, similar situation that I did, but a little older, where she wanted to study hospitality and be a chef. And we all said to her, you know, you'll get bored. This is not for you. But she wouldn't listen. So she went to college, and we wanted her to go to university, but she didn't want to do that. And she also had the same, you know, she'd come home from school and I'd be like, oh, how did you get on today? Oh, yeah, we did this or that happened. And I'm like, oh, good, because your tutor phoned me at 9:30 to ask me why you weren't there. And
Love it.
despite my threats, Tori qualified with a distinction at college, decided she wanted to be a chef, and then after a couple of years, decided she didn't want to be a chef. And asked us for a job at ResourceiT. She was about 19, I think, something like that. Oh, I'll come and work for you. You know, you've got a company. I'll come and work there.
Yeah.
How did it shape? The answer was no. You go and get a job in the industry and educate yourself.
Yeah.
And dig in yourself and put your time and effort into your career. And when you've proven that you can be successful and committed, then we'll talk about it. So I think the school of hard knocks that I came from, I definitely, Tori did not have an easy ride into ResourceiT. So she did get a job with an IT reseller as a marketing assistant. Then she went to work at Avnet as a distributor, then landed a job at Snow as their digital marketing leader. And that was about the advent of social media was really starting to take off then. And of course, she was a digital native and a millennial. Within about a year and a half, 50% of Snow's leads were coming through digital.
Wow.
And this is a multi-million pound business. So then she said, she came back to us, she was about 25, I think, by then. And she said, right, I've decided I'm going to work for an agency. So give me a job. I'll be working for your competition. And we were, okay, fair enough. In you come. You've proved it. And she's been here for 6 years, and Tori is now the general manager of ResourceiT, and she runs the business brilliantly. So that would kind of be one example, I think. The challenge is that I think when you do well yourself, your children have a different experience. What we've tried to do is, yes, of course, they have advantages in some ways. Maybe we had nicer cars, or they had holidays, and they had things I never had. But that didn't mean that we didn't make them work for their own success and carry that through. And I think they've all got a fantastic work ethic. They all stand on their own 2 feet, and I'm super, super proud of them. And actually, none of them went to university either, through their choice, actually.
And so what's next then? If I don't want to, set the horses running, but what can you talk about that's, on your radar that you fancy doing next?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So remember I said that when I went to school and I wanted to be a travel writer and I wanted to be a journalist. So my plan is, over the next period of time, however that's working with Tori and I, she is obviously sat in the big seat now, but I'm still involved on a day-to-day basis with ResourceiT because I love it. But I want to travel and write full time. So that is, I kind of feel like I'm sort of going full circle. It's taken me 40 years. I might actually get to do the job that I wanted to do when I was 16. So how that manifests itself, I don't know. But I know that going back to my love of art, my love of English, my love of travel. I'm finally, I'm 56 in October, so I'm really looking forward to, hopefully in the next few years, being able to do more of that
Yeah.
and less of kind of what I'm doing today. But hey, with the way the UK economy is going, we'll see what happens.
Well, yeah, yeah. I was not expecting that. I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And what did you think? Because I think similarly, I had wanted to write and perform when I was at school, but drama teacher said to me, no. And now I get to do that, but it took decades, decades for that to happen. What would what was your advice based on sort of the stuff you've learned, the experiences you've had? What advice would you have to offer? Because you've kind of got the piece on, handing over the reins of the business and that lifelong learning and finding out, I don't know, how to be more honest and tell people what's going on with you. But yeah, I guess what words of wisdom would you offer people who are maybe looking to follow your path or feel like it's too late or
I feel like the one piece of advice I would give is to be gracefully honest. And I say gracefully honest because we could all say honest things or do honest things that actually can be quite destructive.
mm,
So, one has to accept that there is a way of being honest. And
mm,
to do that with grace and respectfully is one way, and it earns you nothing but respect.
mm,
This project isn't the right thing for us because, look, I've got to be honest with you, something's gone wrong here, but here's what I'm going to do about it.
mm,
With an employee, talking to them and saying, look, can I be honest? I'm not seeing what I need in terms of how you're performing in this role, but here's the things that I'd like us to focus on. Whatever the conversation is, I feel like the more honest I've been,
mm,
the more goodwill has come back to me. And whenever I've tried to not be honest, it's not been the same experience. So my advice is I yeah, gracefully honest is what has helped me to succeed, I think. And to be honest, Tony, I've just worked hard.
mm.
I just make more phone calls, speak to more people, make more effort,
Yeah.
and that is a numbers game, certainly in when you're networking or trying to grow a business. If you can sit still and things will dry up, or you just keep going and you just work harder. And
Mm.
when you do something you love, it doesn't feel like work, does it? So
No, well, this hasn't at all felt like work. And I'm thankful for your time, Julie. And yeah, gracefully honest. I'm going to take that with me for the rest of the day and beyond. Thank
thanks,
you.
Tony. What a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly had a great time, as always.
Lovely.